Electric Jam Podcast.
Greetings and salutations, everyone. Welcome to the Electric Jam Podcast. I'm Christopher, and I am here, as always, with Richard. If you don't know who we are, check out the website in the description of the podcast. Electric Jam has guitar reviews, gear testing, and most importantly, tons of info on recording and DAW systems. Richard, how are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you very much. How are you doing?
I'm medium.
Medium rare.
I'm mid, as the kids say.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm doing great. I'm pretty much always doing great. If I ever tell you I'm doing bad, there's something wrong with me. Fly to America.
Yeah, I do have a headache, but that's I'm not going to let that stop me.
It's probably from all that traffic. You said that there's that new traffic in your neighborhood.
Well, yeah, traffic, and then doing a weekly food shop with two very, very young children. It's always good for headache juice. And also knowing that I was going to be late for the podcast as well, so that didn't help. So I was kind of like, come on. And then you got, my son Archie's going, what's this? Can we get this? Can I have a lollipop? Can I have a watermelon? And then dropped a watermelon.
Can I have a watermelon?
He loves watermelon. He absolutely loves it. But he's got this habit of picking them up, holding it above his head, going, can I have this one? And then dropping it, and it just smashes everywhere, which he did today. Again, it's like the third time. So we have a rule
at
now
the store?
He's not allowed to pick the watermelons up anymore. So it's slightly too heavy for him. But yeah. That's
funny.
Yeah.
Do you have to pay for the watermelon when that happens?
No. Well, no one's been paid for it yet. But I mean, they've done it. This will be the third time in the same store. So I guess eventually they're going to start. I'm going to get a reputation, and they're going to start wanting. Yeah, it's the watermelon guy. They're going to want to start charging me for it.
So hey, did you see that Rick Beato interview with Danny Carey? Because it's funny, you were talking about Danny Carey, I think it was 2 episodes ago, and how cool his studio and practice room is. And I remember seeing pictures of it, but seeing it again on Rick Beato's channel, I was like, oh yeah, that's crazy.
Man, that guy's got access.
What a cool interview, though.
Oh, it's really, really good.
Well, I mean, I love the stuff that he was talking about, too, because he's owned that place since 1989. And Maynard used to live in the attic or something, which is hilarious. But, I mean, he spent so much time just crafting, like, the perfect studio. And that's so cool.
Well, the place is integral to the band. Without that place, Tool wouldn't have existed, which I thought was quite a little magical little segue into the interview, because he was effectively renting it out and just living there and playing drums there with everyone from like Jeff Buckley, which I was like, no way.
I thought that was amazing. Yeah. They did Led Zeppelin covers until 3 o'clock in the morning. How cool is that with Jeff Buckley?
And then Adam and Maynard were basically trying to get their Tool together, and they were renting the room to practice in, and they could never find a drummer who was very good. And he's old, he's quite a bit older than them, isn't he? So he's obviously like, kind of was like, I'll step in and do some stuff with you kids. And then
he's close to Rick's age.
Yeah, he's 62, actually. I think. Yeah. And that's how it started. And it's amazing. He's a really, 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 because he's a really interesting guy, and he's very well spoken, and he's so knowledgeable about what he does, drums and overall production and stuff. But it's nice to hear some like insight from him, because he's obviously, like, I know Maynard's the singer, but he's not. Danny even said in the interview that he's not really there during the kind of when they're putting together the music, because obviously,
right. He said it was
a bit boring for him. Yeah,
right. So, and he felt like he was wasting his time being there, because they're trying to work out a riff for 2 hours. What's Maynard gonna do? He's just sitting there behind the board going, yeah, that sounds good, I guess. Keep going. Yeah. So, but it's nice to hear him talking about the actual like bones of putting together the song and stuff, which obviously has got progressively more difficult, I think, as they started doing more complex stuff. But the really thing that I was like, no way, is that they've never recorded any drums to a click track. None of their albums are done to a click track. I thought that was insane. My jaw dropped when he said that. Yeah. I couldn't believe it.
Like even because he even said he's all well, my parts are never done to a click track. And I was like, well, you're the drummer, so if anyone's playing to a click track, it's going to be you.
It's going to be you, yeah.
Yeah. So, and he made a really good point there, because he was saying that when he was talking about how, you know, music should be able to just move around, and there's tempo changes and stuff goes up and down, and it should be allowed to sort of like free flow basically, and it does do that. And I think that's why a lot of the time, I always think every time I listen to Tool, from a really young age, like my dad used to like a lot of prog, like Rush and King Crimson and stuff like that, and it always had that kind of vibe to it. To me, when I heard Tool, I was like, it kind of sounds like those guys. And then obviously I found out that they were like King Crimson were like a big influence on them. But I think it's because of that meandering. It's like, yeah, it's that meandering like time signature kind of moves around, so it keeps it engaging and interesting. It doesn't just, because when you listen to like a song that's done to a click track, like really precise metal, it's like it's so just on the beat. It's almost like it's done in MIDI almost. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't have that.
Well, I mean, it technically is in some cases, because they quantize the tracks, so everything is right on the line.
Yeah,
like every snare hit, every bass drum hit. And then you just line up the guitars with that too. And yeah, sometimes it just sounds unnatural. It sounds too sterile.
And I think that's why Tool, like the older sort of prog bands from the 70s, where they are just kind of, it's more of a jam session. Not a jam session, but you know, it's like they're keeping their own rhythm. And the Beatles did this as well. They didn't play to click tracks. All their stuff was just done to Ringo with keeping the rhythm. And
exactly.
It gives it that natural kind of swagger that I think, and even he said it too when he was talking to Rick, Danny. He said that it's quite jarring for him to listen to sort of newer music that's done to click tracks, because it's just too on the dot every single time. And I completely agree that he based that kind of connected two dots in my head that had been separated, what seemed like a universe of strangeness, and all of a sudden I was like, oh, that's it, that's literally it. I can't believe he's just basically solved that problem. I've been kind of talking about it to my friends for years, like why certain albums sound better than the others and why certain bands sound better than the other on record, and it's not always to do with the production, because sometimes they sound really good. And I was like, that's it. I think that's it anyway, that it's having that free form flow where the drummer is, I'm keeping the time, so just play with me. And we'll go up and we'll go down. The drummer and the
bassist, they're locked in together, and then the singer and the guitarist have to work around that.
Yeah, and they know what they're doing.
The way it should be.
And there was so many little bits in it when he was talking about like mastering and like Bob Ludwig, and there's just really lots of cool stuff in there that you just didn't know about. And he's such an unassuming guy as well, even though he's an absolute mountain of a man. He's so quite delicately spoken, and you know, it just comes across like just a really just cool guy, just a decent guy that just is kind of completely aware of how fortunate and lucky he is, but he's never, you know, he's just like a kid in a candy store. He's like, yeah, you know, talking about like the thickness of his drums and all that kind of stuff. It's awesome.
Well, you were talking about how big he is and everything, and that takes me back to that story that I told you when we were supposed to be promoting Epiphone, but we talked about Tool for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And that night that I met him at the bar, when I saw Adam Jones's wife's band, Butcher.
Yeah.
And I'm like not a small guy. I'm like 6'1", 200 pounds. Like I'm not a small dude. And Danny Carey absolutely dwarfed me. And you can see it too when he's sitting with Rick on the couch, because Rick isn't a small guy either. Rick's like 5'11". So just seeing them together was really cool. But yeah, all the things that he talked about kind of gave me chills, like the fact that Tom Morello would be in there playing. Carole King. Yeah. Carole King, like what?
Well, he used to play with them. He was like, he was in a band with Jeff Buckley, like a blues band that there's no recordings of.
It was a country band.
Yeah, there's some like tape recordings of it, but that's about it. And he's just like, you know, me and Jeff Buckley did some music together. And like to anyone listening, they're just like, what? They need to hear that. But
He's so
two,
nonchalant about it.
Two of the greatest musicians of all time were in a band together that no one's ever heard of, and no one's ever heard what they're doing. But I just was thinking, like, it'd be such an amazing time to be sort of knocking around in that kind of, because that was back when LA was still pretty LA, you know, and
it was Welcome to the Jungle back then.
Yeah, it was kind of like, you know, Predator 2 just come out. It was a bit, you know, everyone kind of like it was when, like, I always think with when you watch the RoboCop films, I know it's sort of set meant to be in like Detroit and stuff, but I always thought it was kind of like when I was growing up, that's what I always imagined LA was like.
A lot of parts are, yeah.
Yeah, and then
gets
Predator 2 and Predator 2 as well. I always thought that was a really good depiction of LA. And then when I went, I've been to LA a few times now as an adult, and it's pretty close. I mean, it's so hot there. I don't know how anyone does anything. Like I couldn't. Well, it's unbelievable.
It's so nice though at night. Like it might be 80 degrees during the day, but then as soon as the sun goes down, you need like a light jacket, even in the summertime.
Well,
I kind of miss that.
The first time I went, it was a work thing, and I was walking to a shop to buy some
ice cream, not anything bad.
And I was just walking down the road from my hotel, and this police car like pulled up alongside me. He was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "I'm just walking to the shop, get some cigarettes." And he was like, "Where's your car?" And I was like, "I don't have one." He's like, "Why have you got a car?" And I was like, "'Cause what?" And apparently it wasn't jaywalking, but you're not really allowed to walk around there. He was like, "You shouldn't be walking around here. It's too hot, and you know it's people don't walk here." And I was like, "Well, there's a pavement, so you know I'm going to do some walking." And but I was walking back, and my trainers started melting into the pavement, or asphalt, as you guys call it.
Yeah. The pavement gets hot.
Yeah, but they were doing that. I mean, they were all around in like 89, 90, he was saying. Then he said, you know, they played 6 gigs, basically caved everyone's heads in, and then they got signed. And then the rest is history.
And they recorded one of those gigs, too. And that's what you hear on the first album, Opiate.
Yeah.
Those live tracks.
Yeah, and he made the point that they were saying that the why they got signed so quickly was because all the record labels were looking for the new Nirvana, and he seemed to think that's why it all got picked up so quickly.
Which couldn't be further.
Yeah, I was going to say I didn't see that either.
Was popular.
Yeah, and they're not. I mean, they're not exactly the thing that's always weird about Tool is that they're not. Like, you look at someone like Avenged Sevenfold, or even like Queens of the Stone Age, where they have a very prominent kind of front guy who's sort of, you know, like Josh Homme's very marketable, like his kind of look, his whole swagger. And you've got like Avenged Sevenfold, and they're all quite good looking guys. And in Tool, you're just kind of like, no, there's not a single one of them there that you could basically make a sex symbol out of. Or even like someone like, even like, who is it? They're saying this, and it's a really good point. He's a writer. I can't remember his name. But anyway, he's a really good writer. Someone I like that much. I can't remember his name. And he was saying that, you know, if you want to be kind of like notable, it's sort of like you should also like have a personal brand kind of thing, so people recognize you. He says the difference between people that kind of become like kind of famous and are super famous. So the super famous people is like you could literally make like an action figure out of them, and people look at it and go, "Yeah, I know who that is straight away." And he made the analogy saying it doesn't matter if it's like Dwight Schrute from The Office, because you'd know it straight away. You'd know that, like, you know, that the beige shirt and the tie and the big glasses,
right?
Or like Michael Jackson with that, like, you know, the kind of like short trousers and the white socks and the hat and stuff,
leather jacket and the glove.
But Tool never does anything. They never went in for that. They're just kind of like, there's a bald guy, a guy with long hair, an older guy, and Justin, some English dude who looks like what's it called from The Walking Dead.
Well, we didn't even know what they looked like in the 90s, and we talked about that in the Tool episode. Yeah,
well, they were all video. They were audio. They used the video thing. I think Tool's big thing was video. It was word of mouth from other bands who really liked them because they were amazing. But the big thing, particularly I think in the UK, was when Lateralis dropped. It was the videos that he did on MTV2, because MTV2 was massive in the UK.
It was big here too. I remember the first time I ever saw the video for Sober. and I went out and bought the album immediately. But that video that Adam Jones did with all the stop motion and everything, it was so scary. It was so freaky and out there. And then they did the same thing for the next album. But even at that point, by like 1996, 1997, I had no idea who to picture when I was listening to this band.
Well, that's part of the allure, I think. We've talked about this quite a lot before, but it's part of, they have a sort of an air of mystery about them, which I didn't think it was done in a way that was, it was just kind of like, I think they both just kind of...
It wasn't convoluted, no.
No, they like their privacy, I think, as individuals. I mean, it's probably a bit like being... Because that kind of lifestyle that they have, they're all very wealthy from the band, they've made a lot of money. It's kind of the perfect existence. It's like being the bass player in Coldplay. I mean, I have no idea what that guy looks like. I don't even know his name. So
I mean, that night that I met Danny, I think I was one of the only people that walked up and talked to him. Like, I don't think anybody... That was in 2006. And
they're probably too scared if he's as big as you say he is. I'm like, look, there's Danny Carey
Adam
over
was there
He's
too,
enormous.
but Adam was kind of in a weird spot where he was kind of backstage and kind of not. So I didn't want to kind of step over that line, you know?
Yeah.
But
Adam.
Danny was out in the audience and he was just kind of sitting there, and not a lot of people went up to him or anything. So yeah, kind of having that privacy, like you said, is got to be really big. I mean, if Maynard's wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses, a t-shirt, I'm not going to know who he is.
I don't think anyone would
People
bother him
down the
anyway.
road.
I don't think they're not that kind of famous. They're famous for the band and the music. They're not famous celebrities themselves, if that makes sense. I know that's sounds like a misnomer, but it is kind of true with them. Because the band is the thing. Yeah. It's not anyone. It's not any individual in the band. Like Queen, like we mentioned Josh Homme before, but Josh Homme he is Queens of the Stone Age. Like if you saw him walking down the street, you'd be like, that's Josh Homme. Because he's in Queens of the Stone Age and he was in Caius, and he's kind of his own entity. And then there's also Queens of the Stone Age, which he's part of, whereas Tool is basically, it's just Tool. You could love the band for years and not know, what any of them are called. Or, you know what I mean? There's no real front man. Well, there is a front man, it's Maynard, he's a singer, but he's not a front man in the traditional sense. So Tool is just an entity in itself, and there's no real kind of other components to it other than the music. And obviously the art and the videos and stuff. And I think that's by design. Because even when they play live, Maynard's, he's off at the back somewhere usually nowadays.
Yeah, it's very rare that he's up front. However, when he plays with a perfect circle, he's usually right dead center.
Yeah, well, it's a different thing, isn't it? It's a different,
totally different band,
different aesthetic. Yeah. But yeah, there was so many good points. I mean, the Bob Ludwig point, because he's the guy that mastered all of their records, and there's a really good bit when he's talking about they go around to his house to listen to some of the tracks they've been recording, and Bob's there in his palatial mansion with his grand piano, with Grammys all over it, and he's listening to Tool. I think it's 10,000 Days, and Danny's like, "Oh, what do you think?" And he was like, "It's good. He said, "But I think there's a screw loose on the floor, Tom." And he's like, "What?" And then
how could you possibly know that?
Yeah, then he does. They call him, what do they call him? Call him like Magic Ears or something. And then they redo the EQ. They rejig
Golden
the EQ.
Ears.
Golden Ears. That's it. And he just rejigs the EQ, and then he's like, "Yeah, there you go." And he's like, "How did you hear that?" And this guy's like 80, and his ears are that good.
I mean, but
it's
Bob,
incredible.
He's mixed and mastered so many albums at this point.
Do you want me to tell you someone? Jimi Hendrix, Fish, Rush, Motley Crue, Megadeth, Metallica, Gloria Estefan, Queen, Mariah Carey, Beck, Simple Minds, Brian Ferry, Tori Amos, Mark Knopfler, Leonard Cohen, David Bowie, Paul McCartney, Bruce Springsteen, the Bee Gees, Daft Punk, Elton John, Creedence Clearwater Revival, one of my favorite bands of all time, Dire Straits. This list goes on and on and on.
He's literally worked with
everybody,
great artist ever. Yeah. Wow, that's super cool.
Yeah, I'd heard his name mentioned a couple of times when I've been reading magazines or articles, but I'd never. It was only after that I looked into it, and I was like, oh, okay. Because it's almost like an X-Men power to have hearing that good, ears that good, to be able to pick frequency.
And to be able to do it that consistently for that many years.
Yeah, I mean, it's going all the way back to Hendrix.
Crazy. Yeah.
And your ears not lose. I wonder how much his ears are insured for. I bet it's a fortune.
And think about the technology changes in recording since then. So with Hendrix, he was probably working with an 8-track reel-to-reel, where you would have to take a razor blade and splice together takes, compared to now, where he probably has a bunch of outboard gear and stuff like compressors, but it's all computer based.
More or less, yeah, I would say.
He had to go through like every iteration of that, from strictly tape to DAT tape to digital to where we are now.
When's it going to end? Why can't we just settle on something? This keeps going and going and going.
Never.
With that kind of hindsight, though, it kind of makes you think about how things are going to be in like 4 years' time, because people always have a habit of thinking that the present is as good as it's ever going to get, and it's the bleeding edge. But is someone's career like Bob Ludwig's career shows, it's everything changes all the time, constantly. There's always something better coming or something bigger.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't think that way, and I think it's because of my generation. And I was born when Jimmy Carter was president. That tells you what my age is. Never say my age publicly. I'm constantly 39. But
I'm actually 39.
But I watched everything go from VHS tapes and cassette tapes and records to CDs and DVDs. And then all of a sudden, people started having computers at their house, which was something when I was a kid that was insane. Like, I knew people who had a word processor to do homework on. I didn't know anyone that had a computer until high school. And then after that, I mean, cell phones. I mean, I remember the beginnings of all of that. Like, cell phones you used to have in your car, and it would only work in certain parts of Atlanta when I was growing up. Like, you had to be downtown for it to work, because you have
to be a downtown big shop.
Yeah,
but let's face it,
and it was like
you're only going to be downtown if you've got a cell phone in your car, aren't you? Really?
Or $1 a minute, I think it was back then. But yeah, so I don't know. I'm always looking for the next thing, because I don't know. I guess I've been trained that way. Yeah,
but I think another thing from
static.
that I got from that as well was the level of attention that goes into mastering their records, which I didn't realize is obviously it's a huge part of the process. And it's not something that gets a lot of people kind of give a lot of time to, I don't think.
It's not. And we talked about this last week, because we have a full course on the website. It has its own page. You can check it out. It's my guide to mastering. And there's a lot of different ways to master a song. And every song that you master is going to be different, because nothing's ever recorded the same twice. But there's the basics and the essentials. And the course, the way that I kind of lay it out for you, is how to get started in it. If you have no idea where to get started, like you've got a good song, you have it recorded, and you want to put it on streaming, but you notice that your song isn't anywhere close to the volume of other songs, our guide is going to get you there, because this is how I master songs. And speaking of going back to the day, we used to have to do this on tape, and then when it transferred over to digital, I was right there. And I've been there pretty much the entire way. So our course has 3 different options for every plugin that you're going to need. One of them is Reaper. Another one is a great free plugin. And then there's a paid plugin that you can buy if you really want. But all 3 of them are going to accomplish the same thing. And it's a step-by-step guide. Nothing is left out. I'm going to tell you what not to do your first couple times. that you might have seen on YouTube, and they'll tell you to do it, and it's wrong. And 90% of those YouTube videos, they're just trying to push their own plugin on you anyway. And we're not doing that. We're not trying to push a plugin on you at all.
No,
we're just
that's
giving you the information.
Yeah, that's the thing that is really cool about this, is that you can do this completely for free. Like Chris,
Right.
we obviously charge for the guide because it's our intellectual property, and it's some 20 years worth of knowledge from Chris's recording career and working as a sound engineer and working in studios in LA, condensed into basically a document that a complete beginner who's never mastered anything before can sit down at a computer with a track that they've produced and go through it and master it, not without using any expensive tools or software, and get it sounding professional grade. So you can put it on Spotify and it'll sound absolutely huge. And that's huge. That's a really big thing, because mastering is, more often than not, in my experience with bands and working with bands and knowing people in bands, it's a step that's just kind of neglected and forgotten, but it makes such a massive difference, because the first impression when somebody hears your music is everything. And if it sounds flat, or it's a bit weak sounding, it doesn't have its full potential.
Especially if your track comes on after another track that's been professionally mastered already.
Yeah. It's just gonna sound like weak sauce. And yeah, it's a really cool product. I'm really quite proud of it. And so if you're listening now, it will be live on the site, so you can go in there and get it. And also, as with anything, if you buy it and you have any questions, you can just connect with me and Chris. And Chris will happily answer any questions you have about what to do, or if you've got questions about the tools that he uses and recommends, or how to do something. Yeah, just drop us a line and we can help you figure it out.
Yeah. All of our contact info is at the end of the guide. So
yeah, and it'll also be on the invoice as well. So you'll get an invoice with all the contact information. So if you want to speak to somebody, you could be able to contact us through that as well.
Yeah, and I'll totally walk you through anything if you have any problems, or if you're confused about a segment or something like that. I don't mind walking you through it at all. So yeah, there's going to be that. I'm pretty excited about it, because it's something that we've been talking about doing for a long time. We've always wanted to be an educational site and an educational source more than a guitar review channel, because there's a million of those. There's not too many places where you can learn good, actionable information,
Yeah, particularly about this kind of stuff as well, which is way more, there's a million and one different channels that'll show you how to, rip through the A minor pentatonic scale and how to piece together stuff, which is great. But when it comes to actually recording stuff, the quality of the information available online is pretty, it's not
hit or miss.
Yeah, it's hit or miss, and a lot of the time it's just trying to push software affiliate commissions onto software purchases and things like that, which obviously isn't great. And then they just want you to get that, so they get their affiliate commission, and then that's it. Whereas this is it's free. The Reaper's free. All the tools that we recommend are free. You can get everything done without spending any money, apart from obviously the money you'd have spent to download the guide. But it's really fairly priced for the information that's in there, because you're talking like Chris would be, what's 20 years worth of knowledge and experience worth?
Well, I teach this on Skype, and I charge $30 an hour.
Yeah, so you get the guide for $30. So it's a good deal. It's a good deal, and I've been through it, and it's really, I'm not great with stuff like that, and I was like, okay, this is a bit of an eye opener. It kind of like it answered a lot of questions. When you're reading something, you're just like, yeah, okay, oh, right, now I understand.
That's what I use. Yeah, exactly.
It just makes it the whole process kind of idiot proof, and you can just go through it. And the idea is, so you get your track open, you'll open the guide, and then you'll just work through it each time. And then once you've done it like 5 or 6 times, you'll know it. You'll be in your muscle memory, and then the magic stuff starts happening. Then you can start tweaking it and making it your own and adding your own flair to it. And that's kind of the power of it, I think.
Yeah,
because once you can do
start
that,
mastering all of your friends' songs.
yeah,
too,
once
and
you then you
start
can
charging
start a
them some
mastering
money.
business. Yeah, you can be the next Bob Ludwig,
Exactly, the next
next
golden.
Magic Ears or Golden Ears, whatever his name is.
So today's topic is everyone is upgrading, and it's so true, and it's crazy, and this has only been like the last, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks. Epiphone dropped a really big one on us, and it's crazy what they're doing with their Inspired by Gibson lineup. I think it's really cool. I've seen a lot of people that are kind of detractors from it, but I think it's really cool because it's something as a gigging musician or a studio musician I would be interested in, because these are basically Epiphone guitars only in the body and the wood. When it comes to the important parts, like the hardware and the pickups and the wiring and all of that stuff, that's all Gibson.
Yeah.
And that's super cool. And they're right in that whip zone too of, $1,400 to $1,600, to where, yeah, you could probably get a used Gibson for that much, but
Why would
this
you?
is a brand new Epiphone.
Yeah, why would you? It's the brand new.
But it's for those people that want to gig. And in the last episode, I talked about how scared I was taking my Gibson and my PRS to gigs, because you have to watch it like a hawk, because people will steal your stuff.
Oh yeah, God yeah.
Whereas I don't think I would be as emotionally attached to, an Epiphone 59 Les Paul. Sure, I'm going to love it, and sure, I'm going to play it, but it's not going to be like $5,000 gone if someone takes it. And I just think this is really cool. And it's really dictating the way that the market is working, because PRS took notice of that. And they were like, you know what we're going to do? We're going to do the same thing, because they have the S2 line. And the S2 line, I used to own one, actually, when they first started making them, which I want to say is around 2013, 2014, maybe. And I owned one of those first runs, and it got me interested in their USA guitars, and I ended up buying a couple of those too. But the S2 models always had an Achilles heel when it came to the pickups and the wiring and stuff like that, because it had the same stuff as the PRS SE models, which at the time were $500 or $600. So you're getting these cheap pickups and this really amazing guitar. And they've changed that now. So now the S2 line has the narrow field pickups. It has everything that you get on a private stock or core PRS model. And they're like $1,700. The solid color ones with the raw finish, which I think look cool anyway. It doesn't.
Yeah, I
have
really
a
like
fancy
the
top.
I really like the McCartney one, the S2 McCartney 594. I love that guitar.
Which color are you looking at? Because I love the cherry red one. It kind of reminds me of like a vintage SG.
I don't like red guitars
you
or
don't like
cars or anything. I just don't like it. I don't know why. I'm not sure what it is. I just don't like them. I really like the kind of mapley looking one. Looks like maple leopard skin. I don't know. It's weird. It's got like that.
Oh, it's like a sunburst.
Yeah, the sunburst one. I don't know the technical name for it, but it makes sense though, because I think that Gibson's kind of like lopped itself off at the insane ivory tower that it's in, where the average guitar player, which is I'd say 98% of the market, probably more, is not going to pay $5,000 for a guitar. So it makes sense to have like these kind of like premium, like kind of premium models, high-end models, and then budget models. It makes way more sense. Whereas the kind of like the high-end premium would be anywhere from like $1,200 to $1,500, and then you've got the kind of like the higher end models, which would be kind of $800 to $1,000, and then you've got the other ones, which would be $500 to $600, and then you've got the kind of budget stuff, which is Harley Benton territory, stuff like that. It makes way more sense because if you can make something reliable and you can make it, I mean, I don't know what the margins are on a guitar, but the fact that they're now using American components over overseas ones obviously tells me that there is wiggle room with the margins, and they're still obviously making money with these. So
we told the future.
We did.
Our very first podcast episode was about Gibson guitars and our Gibson guitars becoming irrelevant because of the money. And we talked about that wide gap of quality and price between Epiphone and Gibson. And we talked about, I had a plan. I was like, this is how I would fix it. I would make a mid-range with American components that sells for anywhere from $1,100 or $1,200 to about $1,600, and people would jump on it so quick. And I will be damned if that's not exactly what they've done with Epiphone.
Yep.
So totally. I'm going to take credit for it, 110%. It was my idea. Gibson, you owe me money.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, you never know the way algorithms are these days. They could have feelers out everywhere for the next best idea.
It is our most popular episode. Maybe they were one of the downvotes.
Oh, maybe they were. We'll downvote it, but we'll steal it. We'll steal this idea.
Oh, I'm so mad at them for saying it. But, I mean, it really, that's how the market's going.
Well, it makes sense.
If you want to stay relevant and if you want to attract the attention of buyers that now know that affordable guitars exist, like Harley Benton. I mean, like the most expensive Harley Benton's like $500, and that is a hell of a guitar. Like that's a lot of guitar.
Well, I guess one of the arguments against it would be if you position yourself as kind of like a high ticket product brand, which is what Gibson does. So, for instance, for every $5,000 guitar they sell, right? Mm-hmm. Harley Benson's got to sell, to cover the same amount of money. They've got to sell 100 guitars. It
depends on the margin. I mean, because
it depends on the margin, but I can't believe that there's that much of a discrepancy in the margins between an 800 quid guitar and a guitar that costs $5,000. I just don't believe that there's that much of a difference in terms of the way modern production facilities operate. Like, obviously, Gibson, it's much lower cost.
I would say no. With Gibson, I would say no. With PRS, I would absolutely say yes. Some of those woods that they buy, like, if I try to buy that piece of wood, like, if I bought a AAA flame maple that PRS would use for one of their tops, that would be like a $350 piece of lumber.
Oh, you need a better wood guy.
Do you know a wood guy?
Oh, I've got a wood guy.
You got a lumber hookup?
Please stop saying wood, guys.
I've got loads of wood guys. No, I don't. But it's I know what you're saying, but it's all to do with any business like that. It's all to do with supply chain. And controlling the supply chain and locking it down and making sure you've got access to things helps you to lower the price, because you can buy in bulk, you get discounts and whatnot. So, exactly. But my point was that Gibson's business model is probably like, hey, we only need if we can sell $100,000 $5,000 guitars a month. That's quite a lot of money. That's going to be more money than someone like Epiphone would make selling. They'd have to sell a lot more $200 guitars to cover the same amount of revenue that's generated. I mean, I don't know what the costs are, but I think Gibson's just kind of just leaning into the fact now that it's almost like it's like a classic car. It's kind of like a classic car
brand. It's a lifestyle.
It's like it's a lifestyle brand. Yeah,
it really is.
They're just selling the brand is it. I don't know, but I think you're right. I think the overarching theme is that increasingly, like church-going folk, there's going to be fewer and fewer people around that would buy into that. Like we talked about this in the occult episode. It's like, why is people aren't offended that much anymore? I said, well, because the people that used to be offended by this kind of stuff are no longer around. And I think it's the same with Gibson guitars. The people that insist on, buying Gibbs and buy American kind of stuff. It's kind of like a boomery thing. It's not something that has any kind of traction with a modern person or a modern player because.
Well, you painted a really good picture in the last episode of that. Like you painted it perfectly. You were like, I'm a guy and I'm retired. And, I've always had this corporate job, but now I've finally got a Gibson,
got a massive pension, I've got
exactly.
Bought my house, paid $50 for my house, and it's now worth $5 million. In
1982,
it's almost like it's a company from a completely different economy and economic situation.
It's like
I don't think they ever want to appeal. That's why they buy. That's why they bought Epiphone, because that's their kind of journeyman brand, and I get that. But I just think a company of Gibson's size and scale could be doing. I mean, they have the Modern Light, which is, I'm sure, very good. I haven't tested one.
No, they're awful.
Are they awful? Well, I kind of. It's almost like it feels like it's like when Apple does like a cheap iPhone. They're kind of like, yeah, you can have it, but it's not going to be very good. It's kind of like. Disingenuous or passive aggressive move. It's like we had to do it, so we didn't try very hard.
It didn't feel good. I mean, like I've owned Gibsons and I tried them at our affiliate. What was that? 3 or 4 weeks ago when I sent you the picture and you were like, "Oh my God, that's guitar heaven!" And
I actually thought it was an AI generated image. It looked that otherworldly.
Yeah, it's just that many guitars. Yeah, I tried the Modern Light, and it doesn't feel good. I mean, to be honest with you, the PRS SE that was hanging next to it felt better.
Yeah, and I think for that kind of money you could pay for the Modern Light, you might as well just get a kind of high-end Epiphone. It's just an odd situation to find yourself in, particularly because they're from the same company. So it's like you can have this guitar that's got Gibson on the headstock, and it's quite expensive, or you can have this guitar for the same price. It's got better pickups, but it's got Epiphone on the head. So what's it going to be? And it's got a better finish. It looks better. The paint job's probably better. It's just a weird thing. I would.
The gap is closing though, and I think that's really cool. We talked about being in the golden age of guitar, and I fully stand by that. We're definitely in the golden age of guitar, and it just got better because putting that extra step in there, that extra step was something that was always missing. Like, sure, you could buy an $800 Epiphone Les Paul, but then you're going to spend $250 on pickups. You're going to spend $100 on the wiring, to get it up to standard to go play shows with it or record songs or whatever you're going to do with it. And you don't have to do that anymore. Like, they've kicked that step out now.
Yeah, which is good. That's just good product planning there. That's just good business.
It is.
It'd be really good to get somebody from Epiphone on, actually, like somebody from their product, like a suit from the product department, to pick the brains about what they're doing and how they come up with these strategies. And
other than listening to our podcast and doing exactly what we said.
Other than stealing our ideas. That'd be really interesting. But maybe we can for a future episode. So what have we got? What's cooking for next week?
Next week, I'm not entirely sure. I've got about 12 or 13 podcast ideas down.
Ooh, a surprise.
One of them, and you know what? Let's go ahead and just call it. Let's do this one next week, because I think we're going to have different opinions on this one, since I have played a lot of shows. Next week is going to be, is using backing tracks okay? And to what extent?
Ooh. Divisive. I have some pretty strong opinions on this as well. So particularly after seeing Jay-Z headline Glastonbury. So
this came up because I saw that the Eagles are now completely backing track. Someone took 3 of their shows, and all 3 of the shows were in different places at different times, and layered the sound on top of each other, and they're all the same.
The Eagles can go to hell. I don't like that band.
Really? I don't either. Man.
No, they're awful. They're one of the worst.
That's why we're friends.
Dishing out lawsuits against people that try and teach people how to play their only song that anyone seems to know on guitar on YouTube. They get the strikes. They're one of the bands that started the whole YouTube strike thing. So, yeah, screw the Eagles.
Yeah, I don't like the Eagles either. I like the Eagles.
Well, we can talk about that more next week. We can get into why the Eagles suck.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, tune in next week. We'll talk about using backing tracks and if it's okay. And check everything in the description. The link to our new mastering course will be down there. Link to other episodes, as well as the link to our actual website. And pretty much everything else, our YouTube channel. Anything you want to know, it's going to be in the description. And we will see you next week.
See you soon.